Episode 16 of the Scale Up Your Sales and Marketing podcast is all about crafting narratives. And it goes on to say we're unleashing the power of storytelling in sales and marketing. So we've got quite a bit to go through today. We're going to be looking at a specific book and going through the framework. But the first thing to say is that 27th of April is Storytelling Day. And that's the whole reason for us focusing in and diving in on this specific topic today, because this podcast is launching on the 25th, I mean. So, Leisa, tell me about this book in front of you. What have you got?
So, the book that we're going to be basing a lot of our discussions on today is by Donald Miller, and it's called Building a Story Brand. And I think we both came across this book because we were recommended it by people within our network. I think I've read it, well, most of it. You've listened to it, but actually the messages within it have resonated with both of us. And I think it's important to say what it really brought to the fore was that everyone's got a story to tell. It's just about how you craft that story to make it compelling to your audience. So the book, on the front of the book, it says, use the 7 elements of great storytelling to grow your business. And as this podcast is all about growing your business through the means of sales and marketing, Vic, you're going to take us through what those 7 elements are.
I am, yeah. So we've got the framework. There are actually 7 elements, creates his framework. And I know you like the power of 3. So what I'm going to do is take those 7 elements and I'm going to divide them into like beginning, middle, and end, because every story's got a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? So 1 to 7 is within the beginning element, we've got introduction to the character. Then we identify that they have a problem. Then they meet a guide who's going to help them. Then the guide gives them a plan. Now that's like the beginning element. The middle bit is numbers 5 and 6 of that framework. And this is where the guide calls them to action and they put that plan into action. And then the guide helps them avoid failure, because usually in a story, there's an element of something bad is going to happen and you need to avoid it or work out what's going to be put in place to it if that happens.
So just as a quick recap. So
wait, what?
Well,
the last
sorry,
bit?
go on.
No.
Go on. I'm already jumping ahead
in.
thinking I need to mental note this.
So that's 5 and 6. And then at the end of the story, it ends in success. And every story has a happy ending, doesn't it? And when we think about, one of the things Donald Miller, that I love about his book is, within he makes you think about movies. And within the first 10 minutes of a movie, you will have been introduced to the character, understand what their problem is, understand who the guide's going to help them, and know what the plan's going to be. And you kind of know it's going to end in a happy ending because most movies do. But then there's going to be that dip of like a problem happens and they have to career around it.
And that's not because the director of the film has spelled it out to you in that first 10 minutes. It's just because they've started to sow the seeds of what could happen, to start you thinking about, this could unfold in a number of ways. Let's watch more. So it's about, I suppose, the sort of dangling that 10-minute carrot to ensure that you are engaged and you follow the rest of the story through to the end.
And that 10 minutes is really, really crucial, because obviously they've done all the stats about how long people watch a movie for, I guess like on Netflix and everything. They can understand how long are people watching something for before they switch off, and does it include those elements? So when there's a pilot, I guess they can then work out what has been put into that content to make it succeed or fail.
Okay. Right. So before we go into the detail, which I know you're going to do, for the purposes of us that work in threes, i.e. me, just recap the 3. So start the elements of the framework which fit into the start, the middle, and the end.
Yeah. So at the start, we've got introduce the character, explain they've got a problem, they meet their guide, and the guide gives them a plan. That's the start. So more than half is just at the very beginning, that first 10 minutes. Then in the middle, that second bit, they're going to call them to action and help them avoid failure. And then at the end, it all ends in success.
Oh, gosh, what could possibly go wrong?
I know you like threes. So
and I love a plan as well. So
you do. And so that's the framework. But within the rest of the book, because there's so much goodness in this book, is that there's the different principles that he talks about as well. So there's 4 principles. The first one is quite profound. And before I read Donald Miller's book, I think I thought, I think I did. I did think that the hero in the story is the business owner or the business. And Donald Miller made me see things very differently.
Right.
In that actually the customer is the hero. The customer is the person that you need to put at the very centre of everything that you do. And that can also include previous customers as testimonials, so that a new customer comes to you and sees that somebody else has trod this path before. And actually the brand or the business owner is the guide.
Yeah.
They are the person that's leading them, usually because they've been through that problem before. They're leading them through that journey. And so they're stood next to them and helping them, not being like, hey, I'm the hero.
And I suppose it makes absolute sense, because we talk a lot about, identifying the problem that your potential customer or client has, and the solution that you have to that problem, and recognizing that actually the customer should be front and center of everything. It's not really about you. This is not a you thing. This is about how you help the customer, and the customer being the most important.
I know. It's massive. So I think with Donald Miller, and I don't know, how did you come across the book?
I think it was recommended to me, and I think so I work a lot with my clients. So in the context, well, actually, no, it's not just food and drink producers. It's all of my clients that I'm working with on sales outreach projects. So I ask all of them to provide me with some sort of, brand selling deck, or whatever that looks like, a short presentation which has a start, a middle, and an end. So where it all started. So why the business exists, and why it provides the services that it does. Who are they relevant to, and how can they help or meet the needs of the prospects that we're speaking to on their behalf? Because it is about a journey, and it is about taking potential customers through a process of knowing, liking, trusting, and eventually buying. So I came across this book because somebody recommended it to me and said, you need to read this book to help you think about how you craft those documents, or how you help your clients craft those documents, so that they can really tell their story better. And obviously by having that down on paper, it means that that's lots of really rich content, which we can start to weave into our conversations and our communications on behalf of those clients.
Plus also, I guess it gives you confidence knowing that if the customer asks you a question that you don't know the answer to, you're fully armed with a lot of information.
Yeah.
And they're likely to ask you something that you already know, rather than like, oh, I'll go back and find out about that. So that's really smart.
I just share like a really current example, actually. So I was at an event on Friday, and it was a networking event. And when I introduced myself and said what I did, the first question was, oh my God, do you get loads of samples? As in food samples. And I said, well, actually, funny you should say that, because at the minute my office is, abundant with samples. Lucky me. And then we went on to have
what have you got in at the minute?
I've got sweeties. I've got breakfast topping. I've got
breakfast topping.
Yeah, I've got
like muesli or something.
Well, this is a really exciting product, which we'll probably talk about at a later stage. I've got crisps, which are my favourite. So yeah, so all sorts of lovely things, and chocolate. So all the good / bad stuff, but the stuff that I love. So happy days.
Happy Leisa.
But then we went on to speak about, oh my gosh, well, how does it work if you get a product that you really don't like, or you don't like the taste of,
or they've got a really rubbish story?
Well, nobody's got a really rubbish story.
Oh, okay.
It's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Yeah.
Hence the reason why we're talking about storytelling, because there is something for everyone. So what you might think is a rubbish story, somebody else might think that speaks to me on so many levels.
I was being a bit silly.
I know you were. I know you were. But yeah, so we spoke about, well, what happens when you get a product that you've got
You
to
physically
represent,
don't like yourself.
and I'm
Yeah.
thinking, I really don't like it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to lie, it happens a lot, but actually I am able to recognise that I'm probably not the target
audience.
consumer,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's fine for me not to like it.
Yeah.
But also, I don't have to actually like the taste of the product to appreciate the value that it brings to its potential consumer. So I am able to detach myself from, just because I don't like it doesn't mean I can't do a great job of telling its story.
Yeah.
And I think that's the point. Everyone has got a story to tell. And you've got to find the bits of your story which resonate with your ideal customers and clients. Anyway, we digress. Talking too much about sweets, chocolate and crisps. Let's get back to Donald Miller. So tell us a bit more about the book.
Yeah, so there are these principles. We did start talking about the principles. I love it when we go off track. The principles were, so number one is, which we've already mentioned, the customer is the hero, not your brand, which we've touched on. Principle two is that brands sell solutions to problems. Now, sometimes we can think that a product or a service has a reason why people want to buy it. We might think that's really obvious, but there can actually be internal deep problems that people need to buy something for that might not be obvious to the brand owner, and might not actually be obvious at any point because it's not really spoken about. Let me give you an example that might just showcase this. So imagine that you and I go down to Borough Market and we are shopping and thinking, right, let's grab some food to eat while we're here, whilst we're browsing the stalls. So we might find, I don't know, paella or something, and we're like, right, we'll have some paella, and we'll walk around and we'll have a little nosy. That evening, let's say you and I are hosting a dinner party for some friends, okay? And we're walking around and seeing all these different things, and we come across a stall, and on that stall, they're selling this product. And the story and the journey and the story of that product and of the brand owner and of what they do for the customer is so compelling to us that we think, actually, we're going to buy some of that. But we're not buying it because we need to eat that evening. We're buying it because when we sit down with our friends at that dinner party, we're able to relay that story. So what we're handing our money over for is actually an exchange of us flexing our food reputation and our knowledge for finding really intricate, lovely stories, and being able to share that with our friends and say, oh, look at us, aren't we clever that we've gone and found this wonderful story and this really unique brand. So that's an internal, deep fulfillment that is exchanged for money at that point on that stall in Borough Market. So that's his principle number 2. And the principle number 3 is that the customers are looking for a guide, not a hero. So we've already said the hero is the customer, but they're looking for somebody that's gone through that process before. They're looking for somebody that can give them 6 steps to do this. Come and help. Come along, I can help you. Here's 6 steps. We're going to make that thing happen that you really want. And then principle number 4 is about having empathy and authority. And I really love this. Empathy about their problems, understanding this is where you're at, this is your need, but not going too far the other way that it becomes very weird and overly, you don't need to be over empathetic, but you just need to be we understand that you have this issue. That sounds like not as in this issue, but we understand this is where you're at and this is where you want to get to. And then the authority comes from things like awards, statistics, logos of people that they've worked with before. So there's the 4 principles that Donald talks about, and I just really love how he sets everything out, and things just seem very easy to understand. I know it can be a heavy going book, and when I've listened to the Audible a couple of times now, I love how it's always like, "Welcome to Storybrand." He sounds like Santa Claus whenever I'm listening to Donald Miller, but he just comes with an air of like such authority and such like you feel like he is the guide. He's guiding us and making us the hero in our own stories, and then we're passing that down
I've got a couple of
downstream.
examples, if I may,
Oh yeah,
on the subject of being a guide. So I was involved in something recently, and I can't remember what it was, and we were talking about how people want to learn from other people, but actually they don't necessarily want to learn from somebody who's at the top of their game, because that feels too big a mountain to
yeah, big gap.
climb.
Yeah,
What they
okay.
want to who they want to learn from is somebody who's slightly ahead of them in their business journey. Let's say, for example, because actually it feels like they can build some momentum to get there quicker. And I thought, well, that really resonates with me, actually, because if I when I'm picking out people that I want to learn from, help master my craft, I always think, well, let me pick someone who is either 2 years ahead of me,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
has the turnover that I'm aspiring to have,
yeah,
because I feel like they're going to share examples and tools and techniques which I can actually deliver, I can
yeah.
achieve against.
Yeah, it's a realistic next step rather than
Absolutely.
feeling too far ahead. That
Exactly.
makes
And I
sense.
think as well about empathy. So I've got a really great example of that. So that in my business, I do a lot of our sales outreach is done over the telephone. And I think I've always known it, but probably only recently have I really understood the value of that and how repulsed by it so many business owners are. So this deep-rooted fear of the phone, like I could not possibly pick up the phone and speak to a prospect about, my business or products. So that's how we get work, because the business owner just hates it, and
Mm,
they don't even want to be taught how to do it
yeah,
effectively. They just don't want to do it
yeah,
because it's deep rooted.
yeah.
They've had a bad experience. They just want us to solve the problem. So we're doing a project at the minute, and the way that it works is that we generate the calls to action over the telephone, which is usually, oh, yes, please, I'd like some more information via email. And we pass that over to the client for them to fulfill those requests. Now, usually at this point, we would think, job done, we've done what we came here to do. But actually, as I'm trying to offer a customer experience, which is, second to none, I know that if I hand those leads over, they will send an email, absolutely, but they will definitely not pick up the phone to check in with that prospect to see whether anything's going to happen with it.
Mm,
So as an enhancement to the service, and as a recognition and a demonstration of empathy towards that client, we're actually going to do that for them. So they'll send the emails, and then we'll do the follow-up calls to check in on, have they received the email? Did they like what they saw? Where do we go from here? Because it's about setting people up for success and
mm-hmm.
actually empathizing to the point where you think, I can help them with that. So I get it. I really get it. So yeah, I just wanted to share those couple of examples. So empathy is really, really key, I think. And actually, unpicking what the root problem is takes time and
Mm,
actually comes about with trust, because not everyone is open and upfront enough to share with you when you first start doing business together the real reason why they've engaged you to do business with them.
and I think you've hit on something there. It's almost like, how does a business find that out? And one thing that we're going through at the moment, and that we've done with customers before, is having those initial conversations as you're building a product or a service, and speaking with your demographic, your target audience, and saying, how do you go about finding this kind of thing? Where do you normally look? What kind of things do you need? Why do you need it? And having those conversations, they usually tell you exactly what it is that you need to fill that empathy gap with. I
Yeah.
understand that you need blah.
Yeah. And I suppose that's our role as guides in this
Yeah.
story, isn't it?
Yeah.
To guide them to the right outcome, whatever that might be.
And to pass that on as well. So Donald's taught us, we're then helping them to understand it, but then also them understanding what their customers need in terms of empathy. So it's a waterfall effect,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
And one thing that we touched on before we came on to the podcast was that actually what Donald is teaching us is never really like a finished product. It's something that we're always constantly working towards, you know, whether that's like gathering more testimonials, doing a bit more market research, tweaking the website copy to be more about, we understand you need this is where you're at, this is where you want to get to, rather than like, we are double award winning, blah, 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 blah. Nobody wants to know that. And so, you know, like I was...
It's the so what, isn't it?
It is. It's like, and how is that going to help me as a customer? And, you know, I shared with you before, you know, even at Touchpoints, we still see things that we've got that are historical that we're like, we need to change this now. We need to make those tweaks. So what we're kind of saying is like, there might not be perfection in this area. And it's something that we're all working towards to make things a lot better.
And back to the movies, that's why sequels exist, isn't it? Because stories are always evolving.
Yeah.
And your story now is your story now. It doesn't mean that that will be your story in 2 years' time or even 2 months' time. Actually, it's important to recognise that, you know, you build on it. You have a foundation, but then you build on that as you go. And I think, you know, that everyone loves a good story, don't they?
They do.
And don't be afraid to tell yours, but make sure you recognise that it's not all about you. It's about how you do what you do to help other people. So finding those solutions to your potential customers and clients' problems. So thank you very much. I feel like this has been a bit of a book review style session, but I think
it's just that we both really felt passionate about this particular book, and with it being National Storytelling Day, we felt it was just really appropriate to dig deeper into this and to pass the knowledge on.
Yeah, just start to think about, you know, the key elements of your story and how you can start to really bring those to life through your marketing materials.
Yeah, and we'd love to hear from people listening or watching if there's particular things in your story that you're thinking it looks great or that you want help with. Please reach out to us and we can have a chat about it.
Yeah, and on that note, please don't forget to follow us over on Instagram at Scale Up Podcast, where we share behind the scenes footage and useful tools and techniques to help you scale up your sales and marketing.